Namaste. Welcome to the energy ecosystem session. Now, understanding the energy mix or the range of natural resources from which we derive energy from can be an effective means of understanding the energy ecosystem of a region or a country. In fact, it has been said that the energy mix of a country can be its energy identity card. It can tell us about its history, geography, investments, availability of natural resources, and geopolitical constraints. However, this will be a topic for another time. In this session, to try to understand the energy ecosystem in the Himalayas, we will use Nepal as a case study and discuss some issues relevant for Nepal that may be extrapolated to other countries in the Himalayan region. If you look at Nepal's current energy mix, about 71% of the primary energy comes from traditional fuels, firewood, agricultural residue, and animal dung. 14% from fossil fuels, used largely in transport but increasingly for cooking. 5% from coal, used largely in industries. Only 6% from hydropower, and the remaining 4% from other renewables. Therefore, to have an energy ecosystem that is efficient and sustainable, we need to consider how to move away from the use of traditional and fossil fuels and increasingly go towards electricity and heat from clean, renewable, and indigenous energy sources like hydropower, solar, renewable biomass, and others. However, this transition might not happen at once. Therefore, we must also look at ways to use traditional and fossil fuels more efficiently and also increase efficiency in our use of electricity. With this short background, I would like to now go to Pratik with my first question. We in the Himalayas are very blessed with abundant hydropower resources. And it is well accepted, Pratik, that hydropower will be the backbone of Nepal's push to clean, renewable, and sustainable energy use. However, given the seasonal variation of our mostly run-of-river hydropower plants, where we just use the water of the river without storing it in large dams, and changes in the river flow, and also intensification of natural events like floods, landslides, etc., potentially brought about by climate change, how do you think we can best move forward with hydropower development in Nepal? And as a follow-up, do you think our immense solar energy potential could also complement our hydropower production to make our energy system more resilient?
Thank you, Suman. Firstly, I think, yes, we are very much, not only in Nepal, in the Himalayas, we are blessed with water, which is a source for hydropower energy. And basically, just for simplification, because we have these high Himalayan mountains and we have the clouds from the Indian Ocean that's coming, striking in the mountains, we have intense monsoon rainfall during the wet season. At the same time, we have snows, which is lined up, and when it warms up, we have the ice, snow melt that gives a kind of perennial flow in the rivers. But then there's like Suman had mentioned, there's a seasonal variability, which kind of makes, during the dry season, we have very low flows, and which jumps up during the rainy season, even up to like 50, 100 times during the monsoon. So how best to use that? Now, coming to that with the hydropower generation, because the flow, water is the kind of the fuel for hydropower generation, and since we are depending on the river, so depending on the type of flow that we are using, runoff river, we call there's three different types of hydropower projects. Runoff river project, for example, which means we just tap in the water straight from the river and generate it. But then there's a limit to how much you generate because you are not storing water. But then you have a peaking runoff river, which earlier days we have been just generating whatever comes in the river, we are generating, and they have been designed like it can run even like almost like 90% of the year at the same capacity. But then there's changes going on because we need to tap in more for the peak energy as well, which is normally in the evening and the morning. So with that, there's a transition last, I think, for 10, 15 years. We are coming with a peaking run-of-river time because the run-of-river project energy is not able to meet that. So then peaking means you need to store certain amount of water with a larger dam, so that you store the water for say 20 hours, and then for the peak time 2 hours either in the morning or evening you generate at a full capacity so that you meet the peak demand. And then there's a storage type, which you have a high dam and store whatever water that's coming into that river or basin, and then you can store and use it to balance whatever is coming. So now this is just general type, I'm just mentioning. So now coming back to the climate change impacts. Yes, because of climate change, we have extreme events that we have been not only theoretically, but experienced as well since the last 5-6 years. And because of that, you have intense, more extreme wet seasons and drier period. And because of this, how to tackle it, because I'm in the professional field, in the hydropower technical field, and now we have to plan to have structures that are more resilient to climate change. But how do we do that? Because we know there's a lot of impacts that's going to come from natural events like landslide, dam effects, and all that. So one of the solution that is best for this is to do the simulation of these projects or dam that you are trying to build in a smaller scale, like we call a hydraulic model, where you can simulate flows or even landslides, which the river has never experienced in its lifetime. Isn't it amazing? And especially for the lenders to kind of make sure that you don't have enough risk. So based on that, you can come up with the designs which is like a climate resilient. I won't say fully, but this is what is one of the best method of kind of looking into it. And not only the model study, even sediment, which we are talking about, extreme landslide, they call it the glacial lake outburst flood. What are the impacts? So you could simulate some of those. Normally, we don't do that in normal studies, but you can do that as well, and to make sure that how much of the flow you can pass it on. In a simple term, whenever you have a hydropower dam, you have a hydropower project, you have a little dam because you need to divert the water. Because basically, hydropower is simple. You take the water and drop it. So that is when it generates. For those, I know there's a lot of different background people. I just want to give a simple solution. Like you imagine a fan, and when you plug it in, you have the fan rotating and you have a full blast of wind coming in. But you just need to reverse the rotation either by wind, which is a wind power energy, or using water to move those fans or turbines, and then you reverse the process so you generate electricity. That's basically as simple as that. But then it has a lot of details and complication in terms of looking into the society, into the community, into the access, into the environment. So we need to take care of all those aspects as well.
Right. Thank you. I think what you are suggesting is we have to have a variety of ways to generate electricity from hydropower and also make sure that our planning is good. Great. Now, having talked a little about the supply side of energy, I would like to now come into the usage. And then my next question will be for Pooja. One of the areas of substantial use of traditional fuels and now increasing use of fossil fuels in the form of LPG is cooking. Changing to clean cooking through more efficient use of biomass in the form of pellets and briquettes, and to electric cooking, we've realized is not only a technical issue, but also a social and economic one. Now, given practical actions and your personal experience in this, how do you think we can best make this transition in cooking?
Well, thank you, Sumanji. Please excuse me for my voice today. Transition towards clean cooking, which is about efficient use of biomass and also use of electricity for cooking. So that's what we are calling clean cooking. It's not difficult, I'd say, but you may be surprised. If it's not difficult, then why more than half of the population in Nepal are still relying on traditional fuels? Why are they not into the clean cooking? So why I'm saying it's not difficult is I have been saying that this year, 2024, is going to be a turning year for clean cooking space because we have done a lot of research. If we talk about electric cooking, in the last 5 years, we've done a lot of research studies. We have completed a lot of demonstration projects, and we know the answers. So it's the time now to have investments in clean cooking space. We know what works and what doesn't. We know the solution. So that's why I'm saying the transition is not difficult. But yet, the speed has to be enhanced. So for us, like Practical Action and for myself, we have been in this clean cooking space for more than 20 years. We've done a lot of research. We came from, if you know the technology, like we came from a tier 2 stoves which are not as efficient as now. And then we have now reached to electric cooking space. There are different things, but for today, I would like to highlight on 3 areas. First, if I may ask to this audience, because I do speak in an audience where there are energy professionals, but here I do see a lot of diverse stakeholders. So if I may ask you, like how many of you are using induction cooktop at your home? Interesting.
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot, actually, yeah. But less than what we usually see in the energy workshop. So the question here is why the transition is not happening. It's about the information. It's about the knowledge, and it's about the behavior change. So the first thing which needs investment is demand stimulation. When you go to the communities, people don't know whether it's electric cooking or whether it's efficient use of biomass. There are biomass technologies which are higher in efficiency. So people do not know about those technologies. The private sectors are there manufacturing their stoves in the market centers or like in city locations. They don't know where their customers are. If again I talk about induction cooktop, people don't know how much they need to pay for that. What are the standards? Can I cook my, usual food like roti in that induction cooktops or not? So there are various kinds of questions which we have answered, like we've done a lot of research and we know that there are answers for that. That now the time is to go to the communities, invest in demand stimulation, talk about these issues, have more conversations with the stakeholders in the communities, and then bridge the gap of this trust, bridging about the technology. So the first thing is on the demand stimulation. Investments is highly needed there, not only on the, like we talked about green investment yesterday. So investment is not only needed in the enterprise sector or the electricity infrastructure sector, but the demand stimulation part as well. The next is on the affordability. I'll be very brief on this. We have seen various experiences in the renewable energy technologies about the subsidy schemes, about the incentive schemes. There should not be a blanket approach. And we all know about the subsidy. It has to be time-bound. It has to be scientifically designed. And there has to be a reform. So now it's a high time for Nepal to reform, to think about the subsidy that is in the clean cooking space. We need to have a tailored market mechanism. I'm not against the subsidy. There are areas where you need demand subsidies, like demand for the users who are in very remote locations, who are under extreme poverty, who have different needs than other average people. So there you may need those kind of targeted time-bound subsidies. But for other places, you need market mechanisms, and where we are working with the private sectors and the last mile distributors. So happy to brief about those initiatives as well later. The other is about the regulatory. I don't know how much we are aware about the electricity regulatory systems. Like if the voltage is not sufficient or is not reliable, and if my appliances are broken, then do we know that are we getting are the utilities, is the utility being penalized for that purpose? We don't know, or many of us don't know maybe. So that is the thing. Regulatory body also has to be very strong, and in the end, we should not only talk about one technology, not only electric cooking, not only biomass, advanced biomass solutions. It has to go in an integrated way to the communities, and communities should be able to have choices to choose between whether it's like electric cooking or biogas or advanced biomass solutions. So the solution is there,
Right.
and we can do it.
Great, great. So it's having a multi-pronged approach, making sure that there's investment, making sure that it's affordable, and making sure that you make efforts to change the behavior, etc., and the policies that help. Now I'd like to come to Subbalakshmi, and the government of Nepal has already committed to achieving net zero by 2045, and the energy sector is one of the most important contributors to emission reduction. In this regard, the government is exploring effective strategies to increasingly transition from non-electricity-based to electricity-based energy use, as well as to increase energy consumption. In your opinion, what should the government's most important considerations be when drafting the strategies?
Thank you, Sumaji, for this question. I feel privileged to be here with the distinguished panelists, along with wonderful participants all over the world, I could see, focusing on the critical aspects of Nepal's future energy ecosystem. And I think this discussion will obviously drive us from the policy to the practice perspectives. And yes, Nepal is very, very ambitious and committed to achieve net zero emission, net zero by 2045. And this ambitious goal is both timely, and I could say that it's equally relevant, necessary for the context of Nepal, because as we all know that we are one of the 10 most vulnerable country to the natural disasters. And in the context of Nepal, I would positively say that we are producer of 100% renewable energy in the production side, but in the consumption side, if we say that in most of the areas, like intensive areas, like Pujaji had already said, in the cooking areas, like residential to industry or transportation, everywhere we are having we have opportunity to transition from the conventional fuel to the more cleaner or in the low carbon fuels. So to say, ultimately to the electrification of domestic electrification that is coming from the domestic hydropower. In the context of energy, we say that whatever or wherever we do need first energy to excel that what we would like to do. And while talking about energy transition, and we mostly talk about having renewables or energy efficiency or fuel switching. And myself, representing Alternative Energy Promotion Center, which is basically mandated for promotion of renewable energy and energy efficiency throughout the country. Which is, I think, which is very, very much relevant in the context of Himalayan region, where we could not have grid electrification all over the areas, and fuel switching options like heating, e-cooking, or EVs there. So, and some of the studies has shows that there has been, while transitioning, there is a opportunity to have a less pollution, right, in the context of electricity, and we are mostly reliable in electricity. And other than that, we have advanced technologies, which is hydrogen, and we have recently approved hydrogen policy for the country, and carbon captures opportunities for the industries as well. But while saying so, in Nepal, Nepal's electricity consumption is very, very less, 380 to 400 kilowatt hour up to now, and we are aspiring to have 1500 kilowatt hour by 2030. And if you see other energy consumption, then we will say that per capita energy consumption is very, very high, like 200,000 gigajoule, which is very energy intensive, so to say. And to transition from non-electricity based to the electricity based energy uses in every sector, we could see that the scenario has been really changed, and all the sectors are very, very willing to transition from non-electricity based to electricity based. But for that, we need to have like a reliable and sustainable supply of electricity. And for that, I think massive investment needs to be there for transmission and distribution system, along with the distributed renewable energy generation in the areas, basically in the remote areas. And government, I think, should invest in R&D or facilitate public-private partnership, streamline regulatory framework, and accelerate the deployment of clean energy infrastructure throughout the nation, I could say. As we all know that if we take an example of Kathmandu Valley itself, like we can have intermittent electricity interruption, even though there is a robust transmission distribution system, but the barrier is the capacity, like how much we can inject over there. So likewise, in Himalayan region also, I think in some of the areas, we don't have even grid electricity over there, and we have some DREs over there, but the quality and investment needs to be there. We need to see further. And despite, I have already said that despite there is an immense will to transition, it is not happening due to the constraint to transmission, distribution, and deployment of DRE solution. So Government of Nepal must prioritize on infrastructure development, policy coherence, stakeholder engagement, and while drafting strategies. Also to like major thrust, like we have ample of policies and plans, action plans, but the implementation where we are lacking, and sufficient resource allocation and concrete action plans should lead us to where we want it to be. Thank you so much. I would like to stop here.
Thank you. I think one thing that you have emphasized is to really make this transition, we need a lot of investment. So that's going to be a thrust. Now, I'd like to come back to Pooja. Now, in energy transition efforts, especially in developing countries like Nepal, energy justice is an important issue. Now, energy justice has been defined in many ways, but it means the equitable sharing of the benefits, burdens, and decision-making in the production and consumption of energy services. And I think this is an important issue even in the Himalayan region. So how do you think we can best achieve energy justice, Pooja?
Energy justice or just energy transition, for me, it's about leaving no one behind, definitely. And when I think about it, for me, what's more important is generational justice. And I was very happy to see young fellows here being part of this conversation. So one of the key messages is when you are talking about, when you are having conversations around energy justice, you need to have youth, you need to have next generation people. So for whom we are saving this planet. So generational justice has to be there. The other most important thing is about procedural justice. So again, I'll go back to my cooking example. For example, when we're talking about electric cooking, I might be interested, and I'm interested, and I buy the electric cooking cooktops. I start using cooktops for my cooking. Earlier, I was using biomass stoves, and maybe you were selling me those firewood, and that was the only livelihood options for you. So when we talk about energy justice, just transition, we should not only talk about me, like who is benefiting from that transition, but also you who is negatively being affected by this transition. So that's a very small example. When you talk about EVs, like electric vehicles now, we do have so many people. I don't know the data, but we do have people in that supply chain as well. You do have petrol stations. We do have people in the transportation sector. So I don't know, like, how much we are dealing with that, like, how much we are, including those people in this just energy transition. So again, the message is, when I, like, while I say that energy transition or like clean cooking transition is not that difficult, now you're asking me just energy transition, it's going to be difficult. And it has to be a very comprehensive plan when you talk about energy just transition. Also, gender justice, that's something we should not, we do not have any privilege or luxury if we don't talk about gender justice and if we just talk about just transition. Again, there are like many platforms or initiatives at the international level for the just energy transition platform. Like rich nations are partnering with the countries who are being affected, or like countries like us. But we also need to have a local just energy transition platform where all these kind of stakeholders who are being affected in this process has to be included and has to be engaged in the conversation. So yeah, for me, like it's for practical action as well. We've been thinking about this topic, but again, investments is needed. But more than that, we all need to be aware that it's not only about the people benefiting from the transition, but negatively affected by the transition.
Right. Yeah, I think a very good point. Because the losers of this energy transition sometimes are the most vulnerable members of our society. So we have to make sure that we bring everybody along in this transition. Now I'd like to go to Prateek and again get back to a little discussion on electricity and hydropower. Now in Nepal especially, there has been a discussion about whether exporting of electricity or using electricity domestically as being a zero-sum game, as if you do one, you cannot do the other. Is there a way in which we can make this a win-win situation, that we can actually trade in energy, but also use energy to develop domestically?
I agree. I think there was definitely there was a time 7-8 years ago when up to 2018, I think if I remember, when we had a load shedding, and no one would talk about export. If you talk, you are creating crime or you are being unpatriotic. That was definitely the time when there was a shortage of electricity. But the things have changed because it all depends on the supply of generation. So right now, I mean, just this week at the beginning, we had news coming up that the government of Nepal has opened up PPAs, power purchase agreement, which is up to 10 megawatt whenever and wherever they want now. Because earlier there was a restriction on the run-of-river projects, but for up to 10 megawatt now, there's no kind of restriction on that. So this is kind of welcoming step that the government is bringing to encourage the development. In addition to that, they have also said for those who have done PPAs, power purchase agreement, they can increase the installed capacity by 25%. See? Which means, for those who need to know that, so this additional 25% is just for the rainy season. It's not going to be in the dry, because during the dry season, as I mentioned earlier, you have the low flows, so you cannot generate even the full capacity. Just for a general understanding, if you have an installed capacity of 100 megawatt, and now you can increase to even 125 megawatt. But then during the dry season, it will run only up to maybe 30 megawatt or something, because that cannot be, it cannot justify for the flows, So that's how the government has come up with a new regulation, which is a very welcoming thing. And you need to understand the reason behind why they have brought this. Is definitely it's been changing now. Instead of, like you said, zero-sum game, now it's like a win-win situation, where definitely the first priority is for domestic supplies. And if you look at the Nepal's domestic supplies, we are currently, I think we have an installed capacity of roughly about 3,000 megawatt right now. And during the winter, when is the peak demand, I think it tunes up to about 2,000. I'm just saying roughly 2,000 megawatt. So which means during the wet season, we have a surplus of about 1,000 megawatt or so, which can be exported now. But if you look at the dry season, the same 3,000 megawatt will generate maybe only like maybe 1,400 megawatt or less. I mean, it depends on the project to project, but I'm just giving you a flavor here on idea. Which means if your peak is maybe dropping from 2,000, maybe 1,800, but there's a shortfall of still 400-500 megawatt. So which means you are importing electricity from India right now to make the generation balance. But this is where the solar would come in to help as well, because during the dry, solar, you know, first thing is installation time is 1.5 years. You can do it very fast. And if you can install within a very short period, whatever the gap short is of 400-500 megawatt, I mean, you can use solar during the daytime to make sure that it's sufficient so that you don't need to import electricity. So that's definitely an advantage of that. And that's one of the reasons why currently also the government opened up solar. It says up to 10% of the PPA generation. So currently they have done a PPA up to 12,000 megawatts, so roughly about 1,200 megawatt of generation. But the PPA for solar, they have given up to close to 200 megawatts, so it's still they have openly opened the PPAs for solar up to even 1,000 megawatt. And the reason behind is, again, as I said, one is for the balance. The other is they're thinking beyond for beyond the domestic for export to India. And as there's been some changes going on the target as well. Earlier, government have something like 15,000 megawatt for 10 years. Now, recently, they are changing to 28,500 megawatt by 2035, which is roughly about 11, 12 years. And the way they have done it, to simplify, is they said domestic demand by 2035 would be about 13,500 megawatt. And India recently had agreed to purchase up to 10,000 megawatt in 10 years. So that's another 10,000 megawatt that needs to be generated to meet that. And Bangladesh, they're planning to export 5,000 megawatt by then. So 15 plus 13 plus 28.5 thousand megawatt is the current target for 2035. So coming back to your question about being from zero-sum game, it's definitely a win-win situation. And also from the domestic side, I would say, because most of the consumption domestically in Nepal has been for domestic use, there hasn't been any energy-intensive industries. And unless and until you do have energy-intensive industries, there's not much going to be increase on the domestic demand. I know, I mean, we are trying to have access from 95% to 100%, but just having access to electricity 100% is not going to increase the consumption electricity drastically. We need to have, changes without having major industries. The increment through domestic demand is not going to meet whatever we are trying to produce.
Right.
So we need to look for a win-win situation for export. Thank you.
Right. So you are kind of suggesting that trading electricity going forward may rather be an imperative rather than a choice to help us balance our energy production, along with having storage projects and solar and making sure that we have more energy-intensive industries.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because either you have to focus, just plan the target so that you just meet the domestic demands. And with the current target, it definitely means that we are trying to export beyond domestic use.
Right, great. Now I'd like to come to Subbalakshmi, and national and international experience has shown that energy efficiency can be an important aspect of sustainable energy mix. However, it does not usually get the attention it deserves. And you mentioned that the Alternative Energy Promotion Center has been mandated to look at both renewable energy and energy efficiency. So how, in your opinion, can energy efficiency contribute to making our energy system more resilient? And what are the most important actions that we must immediately take in this regard?
Thank you, Sumaji, once again. Yes, I would start with what Pratik has stated. until and unless there is energy excess. After energy excess, we could say energy sufficiency. Then we can say the energy efficiency. Truly, national and international practices and studies have shown that energy efficiency is the cleanest fuel. It's our own fuel. It's our first fuel, right? And it's in our own control, and it drives us for the energy sufficiency as well as energy security. Up to now, Nepal has access up to like 95% plus grid electrification, and which is mostly for the energy access. While talking about the energy transition and energy efficiency could play a very higher role, like on the top role, like 44% of energy carbon reduction, carbon emission reduction in next 20 years timeline globally, we could say. In the case of Nepal, also like energy is mostly being produced by hydroelectricity, but consumption side is mostly like a conventional one, and we are transitioning from traditional to the modern fuels. And in the context of energy efficiency, what I would like to say is 1 unit of energy saved is more than 1 unit generated, right? And Nepal has started this energy efficiency journey since 1985 with the start of like awareness creation or energy audits for the industries, or be it like more energy efficient brick lanes or improved cook stoves, like Pujaji said. But still we are in the crawling stage, and we could say that since 2018 we have national energy efficiency strategy, and from then AEPC has been additionally mandated for the look after the energy efficiency issues within the country. And recent COP28 also, it has again spelled out that government or like all over the world, we need to double the energy efficiency rate. And we are in the promulgation of Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Act, and where I think AEPC will have all the arms or resources that needs to be for the realization of energy efficiency goals. And not only AEPC having a renewable energy and energy efficiency mandate, we have countries like Thailand, Bangladesh, Malaysia, or Sri Lanka, where they have a mandate for both renewable energy and energy efficiency for the sustainable, for aiming sustainable energy to be realized. And I could say, like in the simpler terms, in Nepal, in the context of Nepal, if we can say that if we only transition from LPG to electricity-based cooking stoves, then LPG being 40 to 45% efficient, to the electricity could be like 80 to 90% and 95%. And I could see that most of the participants are using induction-based cookstop or like electric cookstop, and but we are always in the back in mind, we are always in the fear, like whether T&D will support that or not, or whether while cooking there will be a problem of power shortage, or we need to switch to the LPG stoves or something like that. And in the Himalayan areas or regions also, we have a problem of like not having transmission distribution. Even there is a transmission distribution, there is a problem of its quality, its reliability, so to say, energy security point of view. So in this area, in the energy efficiency area, to have efficient technologies to be in place, Government of Nepal is working on standard and labeling program for household appliances and minimum energy performance standard for industries and commercial sectors. And I think with the implementation of conducive guidelines and monitoring mechanisms, I could say that Industrial Act is there, but its implementation is not so much. So industries can be make accountable for their energy consumption, or we can incentivize for the compliance of energy saving measures, and where our neighboring country India is doing very great over there. And if we talk about the building sector, so one of the most, like 30% energy being consumed by the building sector, and in Nepal also we are the fastest urbanizing country, and there also we are working for having building energy efficiency codes in coordination with Department of Urban Development and Building Construction. Energy efficiency being a cross-sectoral region, we APC cannot do alone. So we need a lot of support from all the areas. So for that, I think we need to outreach campaigns or workshops like this or educational initiatives to implement the culture of sustainability and drive widespread adoption of energy efficiency area. And most like in Nepal, there has been a lot of in the institutions working for energy efficiency and its measures. And with the studies, it has shown that like there is a less than 3 years of payback period and having a very low-hanging fruits in the context of Nepal as well. So from the government of Nepal, in the macro level perspective, we must prioritize the integration of energy efficiency into long-term planning and policy making by embedding energy efficiency consideration into strategic decision-making planning processes. We can ensure energy sufficiency and energy ecosystem being a most resilient one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I think you have made a good point that a unit of energy saved is much better than a unit of energy that is produced in terms of cost, in terms of convenience, in terms of the time it takes. So I think I'd like to apologize. When we talk about energy, we tend to get a little technical sometimes, and I know this is a diverse audience who are not all of you familiar with the jargon that we use in the energy sector. So now I'd like to open up for question and answer from the floor. If there is anything you didn't understand, you want some clarification, please ask a question. I would request you to restrict yourself to one question. And if you need to have a small context to say that question, maybe a sentence or two of comments only, please, so that we can have a wide range of questions that we can address in the remaining time that we have. So with this, I would just like to open up the floor for the questions. There's already a hand up here.
Thank you. My name is Sagar Koirala. So I'm from a UN Youth Group, a regional focal point. So my question is regarding the hydroelectricity. So a lot of investment is done in hydroelectricity right now in Nepal, and I see a lot of, they are vulnerable to disasters, especially climate change, and a lot of hydropowers have been destroyed, especially by flood, landslide, soil erosion, and other things. So a lot of IPOs are also coming, a lot of shares and everything is coming. So a lot of investment of Nepalese youth people is in hydroelectricity sector. So I see a lot of vulnerabilities in this sector. So how ready are we? Like, what if there is high occurrence of natural disasters and a lot of things come, and a lot of investment of people will be shattered if something happens to most of the hydropower projects. And Nepal has recently passed the Hydrogen Act. So I'd like to especially acknowledge the KU for the remarkable push to the government, and they passed the Hydrogen Act, Blue Hydrogen Act. So don't you think that we need to shift to other forms like hydrogen, and we recently heard that nuclear battery is coming in, a startup in China claiming that they have started nuclear battery. So should we be only limited with the hydroelectricity, or should we need to look at the other alternatives? Because hydroelectricity is very vulnerable to climate change and disasters.
You've made a point. So if we put all our eggs in one basket, and if there's a big disaster and we wipe out all our investment, should we diversify our investment is one question. Maybe we'll take a couple of more questions before I request the panelists to respond to that. Yes, we have a hand up here.
Thank you. I'm Pushpa Sharma. I'm with the NUS ISAS. I have a question to Poojaji regarding the clean cooking. I think that's one very important focus of the government in terms of domestic uses, right? Increasing domestic uses of electricity. And Practical Action has done a lot of work, as you said, based on research. There are many findings, and it's not that difficult to navigate, as you said. One practical thing that I was thinking about in terms of the use of induction stove. As you said, like many of us raised up our hands when we said we use induction stoves. But what portion do we use? How much do we use induction stoves? And LPG as well at the same time also is, I think, an important question. Because with the induction stoves, let's talk about little like low-income people over there. To transition to induction stove is not only about transitioning to a different kind of stove, but also different kinds of appliances, the utensils, which is an additional cost to the people. The stoves themselves are vulnerable.
So your question, sir, is that...
So my question is, in terms of these kinds of constraints, how big of this is a constraint? Have you studied that as well? And how big is this constraint?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, please. You could sit down, sir. Yeah.
My name is Sring Sige, and I'm from Bhutan. So Bhutan also is very much dependent on hydroelectricity, and we have our own share of challenges. My question, firstly, is how sufficient is Nepal in terms of your electricity requirements? Not the overall energy requirements, but on the electric power requirements. Do you have to import electricity? And the second question is with regard to hydroelectric power projects. Some of the newer projects that has happened in Bhutan are going through a lot of challenges when it comes to budget and completion deadlines. How has your recent experiences been? I'm not particularly from the energy sector, so please excuse my ignorance.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe we'll just, I think there is two questions on hydropower. One is, should we just focus on hydropower investment, given that there is more disasters coming up, there's more chances of them being destroyed, but also diversify, as he mentioned, to hydrogen or nuclear battery. And the other question is hydro, the electricity that we produce in Nepal, is it sufficient for our needs? And what are the challenges in hydropower project implementation with regards to budget and time? Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I think let's go with the first question about the impacts of climate change on hydropower, and because it's kind of vulnerable, and a lot of, as said, there's a lot of investment from public as well, and if there's a disaster and if there's a flood, what's going to happen to the investment? Is it investment really friendly kind of thing? Yes, I think hydropower is vulnerable to climate change. It doesn't mean that we should not build it. We should come up with a solution, you know. So in terms of that, so I'll give you kind of a little, so we should try to come up, first we need to find out, get enough sufficient data about the climate change impacts. Yes, we are seeing there's some impacts, especially with the rising temperature, extreme rainfall, as well as high snow melt. But at the same time, you know, you need to come up with some climate resilient designs. And when I say climate resilient design, it doesn't mean just design for a particular one. You need to look at the whole watershed, water basin management. So for that kind of thing, you know, you could have at the basin-wise, you know, one big reservoir kind of thing upstream, which is fairly secure, that can give a regulated flow downstream. So that could be one reason. The other thing is like a runoff river projects where the weir is very small. You don't see a dam at all. It's kind of embedded in the river itself. And when I say this, you know, it's basically when you switch on, when you are, say, 1 or 0, like one generation on, which means you are diverting part of the water from the river into the generation. But the moment you know that there's a flood coming, and this is where early warning systems are very, very important. So we don't have adequate instruments right now, but this is how we should come up. We should have early warning system upstream so that the moment we know that there's some trigger or there's some big flood, we should go into the zero mode, means you stop the generation, you close down all the gates, you open up the river as far as possible that is in the natural state that was earlier, which means it is able to pass on the flood. But not all the rivers would have just the weir, it will have also the gates, right? So, but even then, these the flood that can pass, even for a 500-year flood, or means return period flood, or 1,000-year return period flood, these gates or the dam should be able to pass on those. And this is where, as I said earlier, that the hydraulic model studies is because, and why I'm stressing on that is, you know, in Himalayas, the mountains are very steep, and normal theoretical designs that you do in the textbook is not able to give answers. So you have to model in a smaller scale and replicate, simulate it, and come up with a design, you know. So which we have done in a number of projects, and I can give you an example with, say for example, Khimti project, where if you look at from the top, you don't see a dam as such. It's a little weir, and it's been running for almost now 24, 25 years. And whenever there's a flood, you just close the gate, you let the flood go as it is natural, but you cannot have all design in all the rivers. But whenever there's gated one, you have to make sure that you have early warning system so that the gates are open so that big floods can go. But there might be still, I would say, a very, very extreme events where there might be debris flow and all that, and there'll be some damages, which I think there's a certain amount of risk that has to be taken. But it doesn't mean that the whole structure will be damaged and you cannot generate at all. It's just maybe a matter of time for a month or so at the most, then you can come back to it. And so that is on the...
Right, yeah. Are you in a position to talk about hydrogen that he acknowledged KU is doing well, or nuclear batteries? I guess that's a very new technology.
Not about nuclear battery, but definitely on hydrogen, because I have been trying to promote with KU as well at the during the COVID time when this green hydrogen was coming up. Because one of the simplest thing is of the hydrogen is basically, I think most of you have gone through the lab in chemistry. You use the electricity or battery power to split the water H2O into hydrogen and oxygen. So basically, you are trying to do the same thing in a larger scale. Because you need to start with a simplification understanding. And to do that, you need energy. And this is where I'm trying to promote that you have, wherever there's a hydropower generation plant, you can use either as a pilot project, maybe you can start with even surplus energy and start to have an electrolyzer where you can generate hydrogen. So this is a very possible idea. But we haven't done any pilot project in that scale in the power plant. But the moment the hydrogen is generated, it's not about generation of hydropower, it's about how you contain it, how you transport it, how you use it, because hydrogen is very explosive. So some of the power plants we can dedicate just for green hydrogen production, but then we need to have all the chains that are lined up so that we could use.
Maybe we'll leave it there. Basically, you're saying that excess hydropower could be used to produce hydrogen, which could be a storage of energy, which we could use for other purposes. Now,
just for that, not only the surplus.
Very briefly.
Yeah, sure. Not only surplus, but it can be even, if it's a commercially viable, people can develop hydropower just for green hydrogen.
How big a challenge is staying within budget and time for hydropower development in Nepal? Very short.
Yeah, I think because we are in a very, challenging terrain, and it depends on the accesses, especially if the access road and gets washed away due to flood and all those things. And we have a challenge in terms of geology as well, very weak mountains, Himalayas. Though we have a lot of potential in the drop for hydropower, at the same time, the Himalayas are considered as young mountains. So that's why we don't have strong rocks, because I studied in Norway, so they have the rocks that are solid, and you drill through, no problem. But in Nepal, you encounter a lot of these issues and problems. So because of that, there's challenges and that.
Right. In short, I think we have the same problems in Nepal as you have in Bhutan with hydropower development. Pooja, I think the question is, we are talking about converting to induction cook stoves, but it's expensive because it's not just stoves, but the associated utensils. Can everybody afford it?
Yeah. I understand your concern, and that is where we are working. So the first question, whenever we talk about induction cooktop or electric cooking, the first question we get is it's not appropriate for us. We cannot buy it. But we've been able to convince people with the benefits it has. So we've, again, like I'll not go into the technical details of it, but what we have seen is the first movers are actually the LPG users. Like, like even in the rural areas, people have LPG. Maybe, they are refilling it just once a year, but still they have LPG for their status purpose as well. So they are the first movers. And if you compare the LPG ones with the electric cooking, the initial investment is the same. But on the operation cost, electricity tariff, like cooking on electricity is 60% less expensive than cooking on LPG. But again, if you talk about, for those LPG users, it's easy in a way to convince them with these narratives, but convincing people with the biomass users is really difficult. But we do have all those narratives, all those like benefits over of investment in the beginning, and also we are working on a business model where we are trying to incentivize that initial cost at a supply chain level. So we do have different business models because of which the people in the very remote locations are able to cater this induction cooktop. We have already reached to 10,000 households in the last year, and this year we are again targeting the next 12,000 households. So there are answers. I'll be happy to explain you more with the technical details and all the calculations in the later session. But I'll go back to Sagarji from the consumer perspective, living in a very remote location. Again, I'm giving that example. Distributed renewable energy is something which I would like to see, because when everything goes off, the supply chain will be activated in the cities, in the places like us. But then there, in the remote location, the people will have to again stay in the dark. So for that purpose, also technically, to improve the reliability of the systems, to ensure the reliability, distributed renewable energy is the option that we must encourage. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you so much. To answer both the questions, I could say, Alternative Energy Promotion Center is working for the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Act, where it will drive us for the diversification of the, not only into the big hydros, but in the small hydros and other renewable energy technologies. And we are glad to hear say that like a hydrogen lab was established at KU with the support of AEPC, and now hydrogen policy has been also in place, and hope we will have more activities on that one. And other than that, like I think with the runoff river and having like a surplus in rainy time, I think we could come up with some smart storage system as well. And coming up with the clean cooking solutions as a consumption of domestic energy. APC is working extensively, and we have Sustainable Energy Challenge Fund to have that. And we are also making aware students like how it can be benefited in terms of economic perspective, in terms of energy perspective, in terms of safety perspective as well. So we are working in all kinds of diversification of the things. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I think in the end we've come with some food for thought. In addition to developing big power plants, if we can have a distributed cooling system in this form of refrigerator in each home, if we can have a distributed climate management system in the form of ACs in each home, why can't we have distributed electricity generation in each home so that we are independent of our energy sources. So with that, I would like to thank our panelists for very insightful remarks and the audience for your active participation. Thank you very much.